All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, February 27th. We got a big NBA slate to dive into in today's video, like we always do. When I go through each and every one of these games, I'm going to give you my lean on the spread. I'll give you my lean on the total. We'll talk about any player props that we like within the game as well. But all of my final plays, if you do want to fade me and do the opposite, all those plays are going to be in the pinned comment of today's video. So make sure you check that out. Last night, Crystal Ball was a little bit cloudy. We split a unit on RJ Barrett there, so, a full unit lost on him. Then Simone Fontecchio, we did take a flyer on only a quarter unit play for plus 142 over on FanDuel to make 3 threes. That doesn't come through either. He did have 2 in the first half, and I was like, here we go. Nothing for the rest of the game. Nick Claxton under 11.5 rebounds was our sole cash of the day, so I liked that spot and I liked that look. It was probably my favorite spot of the day, so at least we pulled that one out. But again, not the best day. Units-wise, we lose 1.2 units and only make back a little bit less than that. So it was a day of the red, but not all that terrible. I know the 3 X's looks alarming, but 2 of them were half-unit losses, and then 1 of them was a quarter-unit loss, and our win was a full-unit win. So, at least we kind of mitigated losses there. In terms of the ride of the day, we do have another loss to talk about. I hate to drop the womp on my man Matthew here, but he had Tyrese Halliburton over 11.5 assists. I like the spot. Tyrese Halliburton's going to pass the ball a lot, just not last night. Not his best performance whatsoever. So that ride of the day does not come through. If you guys do not know what the ride of the day is, it's simple. All you got to do is use hashtag ride of the day in the comments. Give me some bangers of picks, and I'll be jumping on board with one person's pick and giving you a shout out in the next video, win or loss. Also giving you a shout out over on Twitter and interacting with you there at EvGuyBoston. That information is in the pinned comment if you do want to follow me there. And the new thing we've done in the last few months is if you win, we continue to ride with your picks for days to come until you lose. So it's very cool. But yeah, go check me out over on Twitter. It just popped up there at EvGuyBoston. But searching for a new ride of the day, so drop those ride of the days in the comments. All right, let's jump right into it. Game number 1 here. I do think it could be a pretty good game depending on injuries here. We have Luka, Green, and Lively, all game time decisions on the Dallas side of things in this Cleveland versus Dallas game. Right now, Cleveland, 4.5-point favorites, total sitting at 233. So this game goes one of 2 ways, and I'm not talking win-loss, but I kind of am, okay? So just bear with me for a second. I think this is either going to be a game where Cleveland slows Dallas down and Cleveland covers the number, which, spoiler alert, I am leaning in that direction. Cleveland's at home. I think they're playing good basketball. Overall, obviously, they've had a few losses here in which you'd like to think that, they can bounce back from, in which they did against Washington, but I don't really consider that like a bounce back, but it's either going to go that way, which I think is the more likely because they're at home, or Dallas comes in and just bounces back from that Indiana loss a couple nights ago and runs the shit out of this game. Seriously, like if Dallas ups the tempo, I do think that we could see Cleveland struggle here, but Cleveland's transition defense isn't terrible. I think that they can slow them down, so give me Cleveland minus the 4.5 points. This is, like I said, probably going to be a good game, so I don't mind it if you guys are sitting there being like, no, this is Dallas all the way, yada, yada, yada. I could see that argument being made, but I also want to say Luka's on the injury report. Green, Lively, like Luka obviously being the main one. It's like I want to wait those out before feeling confidence, any sort of confidence in Dallas. Whereas Cleveland, we've been kind of not able to say this for the majority of the year, is pretty much fully healthy right now. So I like them in this spot. And if I'm leaning Cleveland, I also got to take a peek at the under because, like I said, the game script, in my opinion, is if it's a fast game, Dallas either covers this or wins it outright. If Cleveland can slow this game down, Cleveland wins this one by 5 or more points. Now, from a player prop perspective, I'm looking at Evan Mobley over 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He's been doing a lot lately. He's covered this in 8 of his last 10 games here. Since the All-Star break, he's already done it in 2 of his last 3. He's done it in games in which he plays 28 or more minutes so many times this year. And obviously coming off the injuries, kind of building up to full minute allotment, I think he's there now. And on the season here, the Dallas Mavericks allowing the 5th most points to opposing power forwards, the 9th most rebounds, and the 7th most assists. So, you could cut this up any way you want. Like, I don't mind his over 14.5 points at all. I don't mind his over points plus rebounds or his points plus assists, but I am going to say, hey, If Dallas struggles at all of those stats, give me everything, and let's see if we can get his PRA line there. So again, that line is 24.5. Right now, your best odds are over on DraftKings. Some other player props I'd consider in this game, but that's going to be the only one that I call out as of right now. Another one would be Mitchell over 2.5 threes, but I'm really sticking to that Mobley one for now. Next up, we have Orlando taking on Brooklyn. Orlando coming off of a loss to Atlanta a couple nights back. Brooklyn coming off of a win against Memphis. Felt like the world was on Memphis. Like I leaned Memphis, and so did seemingly everybody else, but it seemed like such a public pick yesterday, which turns out it was. But Brooklyn gets the win there, 111-86. This is a tough one because I like Orlando in this spot, but damn, is 9.5 points a lot to lay. Like, they should be the better defense here. They should honestly be a comparable offense. They're gonna win the rebounding war, right? Like, this should be a game in which Orlando wins. 9.5 points is a hell of a lot to lay, but Brooklyn is on a back-to-back. Brooklyn on back-to-backs this season, only covering in 28% of games, so really struggling there. I'm gonna say give the nod to Orlando here, minus 9.5. I don't love it because that number is so high. In terms of a total, it's down at 214. I don't mind taking the under still. Like, yes, that's a super low number. Yes, you could have a low-scoring game that goes over that, right? Like a 108 to 107 game goes over that at 215. But it just doesn't really seem like Orlando's going to bring the juice here on a back-to-back. They haven't really this season. And Orlando has a good defense. Like, I think that they could really make things difficult for this Brooklyn offense, who, Brooklyn, in terms of where they like to score, they don't really have like a sweet spot here. But Orlando, their only issue is not in the restricted area, so not at the rim, but in the paint, right? Like, so that mid in the paint range, Brooklyn is terrible from that range. So the one Orlando sort of like issue that we could have, a high field goal percentage they allow there, Brooklyn stinks at. So I'm not really concerned about the Brooklyn offense, I guess, whatsoever here. For a couple player props here, I do think that there's another good time here to, I guess, fade Nick Claxton, his under 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists. We had his rebound line at 11.5 right last night, right? It's now down to 9.5. I'm not all that comfortable with that. I still wouldn't hate it if you told me you were taking that. But I like his points, rebounds, and assists here. Playing the Magic a couple times this season in, lower minutes, 20 minutes and 24 minutes. So, that's fair to note. 14 rebounds plus assists, points, rebounds plus assists, and then 14 rebounds plus assists in both meetings. This is a Magic team that obviously is a decent team, especially when healthy against the big. So I like that spot for them. Paolo Banchero is questionable in this spot. It's also a player prop that he's also a player prop that I'm considering here. Now, his lines are starting to get pretty damn inflated, like everything that we have, but he's come back down to earth a little bit, dropping that line for points down to 21.5. I could see him having a decent night here against Brooklyn as well, shooting that mid-range jumper as well. So I like Paolo Banchero's over in points, but that line, it's still coming down, but still seems just a little bit inflated to me. I'd probably rather the Nick Claxton under than that Banchero if you're just picking one. All right, guys, it is Taco Tuesday over on Prize Picks. If you guys are not on Prize Picks, make sure to check it out. No better day to do so than Tuesday when they drop multiple discounts out there, lowering player prop projection lines. Make sure to go check it out, guys. I have a link in the pinned comment. You can hop on Prize Picks and you can get your first deposit matched up to $100, meaning you put in $100, they'll give you a free $100 to play with. It's pretty much like just getting free money and saying, here, do with it what you want, right? You can put it on any slips or anything like that, and you can capitalize on this Taco Tuesday square or multiple squares like they've been dropping. So keep an eye out on the app, guys, because obviously the tacos come out a little bit later, but they will be doing that. So go check out Prize Picks. That link is in the pinned comment. I know everyone's probably heard about Prize Picks at this point. If you haven't, go check it out. That link in the pinned comment. And if you're still kind of like, I don't know if I really want to do it, it is great, guys. It's definitely a really good chance to kind of beat the books, because you can use sportsbooks odds and whatnot, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to get some value over on Prize Picks. So there is an edge there. But at the end of the day, it's just a damn fun and easy app. So go check it out, guys. That link is in the pinned comment. You can also download the Prize Picks app using code GUYBOSTON, GUYBOSTON, spelling bee champ, and you'll get that deposit match as well. Go ahead and check it out. But let's go ahead and get back to the games. All right, Washington taking on Golden State. This spread actually isn't as large as I would think it would be. It's at 10.5, which still, don't get me wrong, still a very high spread, but I would have honestly thought that this would be a spread that's just a tad bit higher. It was 11 last time they played, and Golden State did, win by 11. But nonetheless, guys, we're looking at a 10.5-point spread. I'm going to lean towards Golden State in this spot. I do think that, obviously they're playing good basketball right now, and they're coming off of a loss to Denver, like a team that you can argue it's fine to lose to. So I like them. I'm not deterred by that loss. Washington, they are covering more games than they're winning right now. They've lost 10 straight, or actually maybe even more than 10. I'm just looking at last 10 stats here. They've covered in 5 of those games, and they've covered in spots in which they had big numbers like this, right? So I don't want to say that they get smoked here, but again, that line is lower than I thought. So I'm going to lean towards Golden State here, minus the points. I don't think that becomes a final play, though, because, again, it is a decently big number still, even though I'm saying it's not as big as I thought. In terms of a total, though, this is a spot in which you have Washington, the fastest-paced team in the last 10 games, Golden State, a top 10 team that ranks 7th in terms of pace as well. And you look at what they've done as of late, right? This Golden State team, they're kind of cold when it comes to offense. They have one good game out of the break, and they go 97-103. I think this could totally be a game against Washington where they get everything right and kind of click offensively. So I think for purposes today, I'm going to lean towards the over, just barely. I think this one probably gets to 245, but that's not become a final play either, and I'll tell you why I don't want that to be final play, because it takes 2 to tango, and I don't know if we can trust Washington to carry their weight on the over, and you're probably not going to get good odds for Golden State's team total. So just being honest there, it's I lean over, but I doubt that becomes a final play. Player prop wise, I don't hate looking at some overs in terms of points for Kuminga and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, everyone thinks of him as that catch and shoot shooter, but he does shoot a decent amount of mid-range jumpers, and that's going to be an issue for the Washington Wizards, that they allow plenty of mid-range jumpers there. And I do think that Jonathan Kuminga is going to be able to score at will in the paint and at the rim as well. So 2 spots that I think that the Golden State guys could definitely, kind of thrive in. Atlanta taking on Utah here. So from an injury report perspective, Trae Young is still out. That didn't bother them last game out. They go out and get the dub against Orlando. They win 109-92. I'm going to trust there's a little bit of momentum being built. It could be I'm not going to sound the psycho alert alarm, because they are favorites and they are at home. That'd be kind of nuts of me. It'd be psycho of me to sound the psycho alert alarm. But this is a Utah team that has struggled as of late. And I like the compromisation of the team, but 3 of their last 10 games they've won. They've lost, they just got their first win in 5 games prior to that. It's this Utah team needs to show me a little bit of something before we go and bet on them, especially as road dogs, okay? This is a Utah team that on the road this year has only covered in 42% of games. Now, that being said, Atlanta has been, and probably for foreseeable future, be one of the worst against the spread teams overall, just because of how poorly they started. But they've been better as of late, okay? 6 of the last 10 they've covered in, and they're at home here. The one concern is no Trae Young, but just like last game, I told you guys, the fact that they're still favored against Orlando, who is a better against the spread team and everything like that, without Trae Young, tells me a little bit of something about where the books' minds are at. And we have a similar situation here. You have an Atlanta team that, they're missing their best player. It's well, the books still think that they're favored to win at home, and I'm going to trust it. Give me Atlanta here minus the 2 points. I'll also slightly lean towards the over, just because I do think we're going to have an up-tempo game. Didn't exactly see that. Maybe Trae Young, I kind of mentioned that in the last video. We talked about them with him out. Maybe he truly does push the pace a lot like that, because they only scored 109 points without him there. And their offense has been totally consistent, but this Utah defense has been bad. So I don't think Atlanta's going to have trouble scoring, and Atlanta can't stop a nosebleed. So I do think that, Utah should have a decent night scoring as well. The problem is it's a high number at 236. You're asking a injured Atlanta team and an inconsistent Utah team to go out there and give you a 120 apiece, technically, could be a little bit risky. From a player prop perspective here, it's another game in which I don't have, many plays that I'm, absolutely loving here. Colin Sexton, this is a weird one. It's not a very sexy pick, but found this using Outlier. I don't mind him over 1.5 turnovers here. If we jump into Outlier, you'll see that he's been turning the ball over like crazy. It's an Atlanta team that causes turnovers overall, but against shooting guards, it dips. And it's like, okay, well, they're not causing shooting guard turnovers or point guard turnovers. That's his main position. Their turnovers come from the big man position. So that's a little worrisome, but man, you can't argue 4 turnovers and everything like that, like through these 10 games here, right? Even on the season, he's crushed this in 66%. So could be a play that I consider, but betting turnovers is kind of like hey, bet it, set it, forget it. Do not track it because it's going to be so damn frustrating. But not many player props in this game, hence why we pulled out the turnovers that we like. And by the way, guys, that tool I'll also have linked in the pinned comment. 7 days free of Outlier. Go check that out. We talked about it on stream last night. Outlier is a goated tool, and we have another goated tool that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. All right, Celtics taking on the Sixers. Obviously, this would be a better game if we had Joel Embiid in the mix, but you have a fully healthy Celtics team, a Philly team that, Covington and Embiid, the only ones listed as out right now, getting back Melton. Most guys are starting to get healthy here. I do think this could be a decent game, but like I keep saying about the Celtics team, it's like, They let teams hang and then they just squish them, and I think that could be the case today. Like this Sixers team, what have they done for us lately that would make us think that they can hang with arguably the best team in the league, right? Like I'm a Celtics fan, so I'm a little bit biased here, and I hate the Sixers because I'm a Celtics fan, but we're talking objectively here. Like what have the Sixers done to say, hey, yeah, we can hang with the Celtics? They just got smoked by the Bucks 119-98. Until Embiid gets back, the Sixers team is just not a bet-worthy team, or trustworthy team when betting. Bet-worthy, that's a new term. So give me the Celtics here, a healthy Celtics team. I mean, they can do damn near anything, right? Like the Avengers out there. In terms of a total 228, I'd like to think, and my gut reaction is that this goes over. But Celtics in these big spread games, against Brooklyn, I guess you could say New York, even though it wasn't that big of a spread, against Atlanta, like these games are staying under. So I'll lean towards the under, but I think the Celtics can score, 115 plus in this spot, which is a little bit worrisome if I think that that's their floor. From a player prop perspective in this game, you guys know what I'm going back to. Kristaps Porzingis over 1.5 threes made. Until this thing fails, we can continue to ride with it. And I think this is a good spot. Last time he played the Sixers, which was earlier in November, he did hit 2 threes on 6 attempts, which 33%. Like if you shoot 6 attempts, I like that spot from Philly when it comes to 3-pointers made over the last 7 games. 2 centers, kind of right in the middle of the league there. So it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, nothing that turns me off, nothing that turns me on. But on the season, allowing the 9th most threes to opposing centers. So if the volume's there, I like it. I will say, I talk about that Atlanta game with the books know what they're doing. The fact that they're still leaving and just dangling this Porzingis line out there is a little worrisome, because it's like, how many times is he going to hit before they are thinking, no way? Like, because he's hit this in 9 of his last 10 games. He's hit it in 7 straight, and he's had 3 threes in 2 of his last 3 games. Could be a play that we roll with again, but do I get greedy? Do we continue to hammer it? I don't know. Keep an eye on the pinned comment. All right, speaking of the pinned comment, I told you guys we were going to talk about another tool in just a second, and what we're talking about is the Daily Grind Fantasy tool, the Daily Grind Fantasy Optimizer. What this tool does is it takes into account PrizePicks lines or any of the other apps out there, right? But we're using PrizePicks for this example because it's Taco Tuesday. So it takes into account all of the PrizePicks lines that are offered. Then it looks at the sportsbook, the popular sportsbooks lines, as well as the odds that they're offering to give you a % odds to hit over on PrizePicks, because PrizePicks does not care about odds, right? You can put 2 heavy favorite plays in, you'll still get paid 3x if they 3x if they cash. You could put 2 huge underdog plays in, and if they both hit, you're still going to get paid out 3x your money. So you want to be putting in these juiced plays, and what I mean by juiced is the heavy favorite plays from sportsbooks into PrizePicks, like this Murray Square, right? Minus 148 on Pinnacle, minus 140 on FanDuel, minus 145 over on DK. This is a play that's juiced on sportsbooks. Let's throw it into a PrizePicks slip and trust it. So this is a tool that you can literally come in if you don't have much time, or you're getting home from work or before work, and just get some PrizePicks action going. This is literally the best tool to do so, guys. I have a link in the pinned comment for the optimizer. You can also use code GUYBOSTON. You'll get 25% off. They also have this correlation tool, which is really, really cool. What this does, and you can see they track the progress of it. What this does is it takes into account correlated plays. This is an AI built tool. So if something happens in a game, if A happens, B and C are like likely to happen as well. Very, very cool, guys. Go ahead and check it out. Again, that link is going to be in the pinned comment. Make sure you use code GUYBOSTON to get the 25% off. All right, we got Knicks taking on the Pelicans. Right now, Knicks getting 3 points at home. Total sitting at 219 here. This is an interesting one to me. I think I like the under to start. These two teams played in October. The final score is 96-87, so I'll trust that happens. Neither one of these teams is really playing with crazy pace. The Knicks, actually the slowest team over the last 10 games. So I'm going to lean under right away. In terms of a spread pick here, I think I like the Pelicans. If the Knicks were healthy, I'd like the Knicks, though. So it's only, an OG Anunoby and Julius Randle. I say only, but those guys away from changing my mind on this one. CJ McCollum and Zion are both game time decisions. So obviously we don't like the Pelicans if they don't play, especially Zion. But yeah, this is a spot in which I just think if this spread was a little bit higher, I'd actually consider the Knicks at home, coming off a win against Detroit, if you want to call that a feat. New Orleans kind of needing a win. They were playing good basketball, then they lose as favorites to Miami outright, right? And then they lose as favorites outright again to Chicago. So I think that they're in a good spot to kind of bounce back and get a win. And this New York team, I just feel like the Pelicans can kind of do what they do, but better to some degree. So I'll lean towards the Pelicans. But again, if CJ's out, if Zion's out, this is going to be a huge kind of switch it up type of a mindset on this game. Like I said, I don't mind taking a peek at that under as well. You have two teams that are going to play slow and should try and say, all right, let's get nitty gritty right off the rip. Now, a player prop that I'm not minding in this spot. We've betted before and the line keeps going up, but I think we're going to consider it again. Taking a peek at Josh Hart here. Now, two ways we could look at this. I like his rebounds plus assists. You're getting plus money right now, plus 105 over on DraftKings and BetMGM, and it's 13.5, which is a high number, right? But if we look at his last 10 games, he's averaging 7.5 potential assists. So say he gets, 50% of those, call it 4 assists, right? So now we're up to 4 assists, and then rebound chances here. He's averaging 16 rebound chances. He should get 8. He has a floor of 12 rebounds plus assists. Rebounds and assists can kind of come by accident sometimes. For him to get 2 more for plus money, I really don't hate the spot here. And again, it's for plus money. If this was a minus 130 play, minus 125, I'm not considering it. The fact that there's a plus sign before the odds is kind of what caught my eye and I do think has some value. So very important to note there. Minnesota laying a big number here against San Antonio. Sounding the psycho alert alarm here. I think it's just too big of a number. It's not to knock Minnesota. It's not to say that this is going to be a final play, but Rudy Gobert is a game time decision. Toss up to play. If he doesn't play, I do think that this changes the game drastically. Gobert playing kind of, I guess, hinders anything that, San Antonio can kind of really get into a rhythm doing offensively. But without him, I don't mind San Antonio plus 13.5 points. And another reason being here is that, out of their last 10 games here, both teams have covered this line in their last 5. So if you date back the 10 games of Minnesota, the last 10, and then the 10 games, the last 10 of San Antonio, and put this line to that game, they've covered it in the same amount of games. So it's okay, well, it's not like San Antonio, I was going to say they're a bunch of schleps, they're not a good team, but they're covering more games than they're winning. They've only won 1 game in their last 10. They've covered 4. They have 4 times the amount of wins they have with covers. Minnesota, playing really good basketball and covering, but they're covering smaller lines than this. And again, Rudy Gobert being potentially not playing is kind of the catalyst for this lean. If he plays, it's a pass for me. I don't think I like laying the points of Minnesota still, but I don't think that I truly am hey, San Antonio could keep this one to within 13 points. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit of a caveat there. In terms of a total, so you have the Spurs that, they're going to play quick. And allow Minnesota to play quick. You also have, obviously, Minnesota, who is going to slow things down and really take their time. I don't think Minnesota is going to play fast, even if San Antonio wants them to. So I'll lean towards the under 225.5 here, which kind of helps the 13.5. If this is an under game and you're giving me 13 points, I don't hate it. What I hate is that it's the Spurs. But again, I do think that, if this number was anything more reasonable, even if it was down to, maybe 4 points, I'd probably end up thinking, okay, maybe Minnesota here. But a potential no Gobert and, you're going to be 13.5 for whatever reason. We'll sound it again. I like that San Antonio spot here. for whatever reason, I'm a psycho. Which, you know, we'll do it, guys. If you made it this far into the video, go ahead and comment psycho in the comments. I got a comment the other day. It's like, why do you give us the hardest words to spell in the comments? Hey, do your best. Go ahead and type like SYKO for psycho, something like that. But drop psycho in the comments if you made it this far into the video. And make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button and like button. I always forget to tell you guys a lot of the time in the beginning of the video, but you know what? It is what it is. Like, I think the content speaks for itself. We gain subscribers because of the production value and the effort we put in. But hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and comment psycho if you made it this far into the video. Appreciate each and every one of you. I don't know about other creators or anything on the platform or in this field, but like, I remember the usernames and remember the names. Like, this is truly, when I say community, a community, you know what I mean? Which, can't thank you guys enough for your contribution in building, seriously. So comment psycho. Let's move on with the picks before I get all sentimental and sappy out here. Chicago taking on Detroit. Now, Detroit coming off of a back-to-back here, so, I mean, it's not the best spot for them, and this is a big number, like a very big number, right? 11.5. This is not a Chicago team that you would think truly deserves to be 11.5 point favorites over anyone. They haven't covered that line in forever, but they're playing Detroit. When I say, you know, they don't deserve it over anyone, there's one team or maybe a couple teams that you could say, okay, maybe they do deserve it. And I do think that there could be some decent matchup here for Chicago. So I hate laying the big points, right? But I think this could be a decent spot. Injury note, Isaiah Stewart may be coming back here. But the Bulls have the ability to go big too and almost kind of like trump that. So I'm not really afraid of it. I'll lean toward Chicago minus the points, as well as taking a peek at the over in this spot. I know it's kind of crazy to say because both these teams are not the best offensively, but neither one of their defenses are great in transition. Like, actually, they're both pretty bad. And if you look at that, it's like, well, if this game at all has any transitional aspect, then I do think that we have a chance to be hitting some overs here. Detroit on a back-to-back, 60% of their games have gone over when on a back-to-back. Chicago with a rest advantage, 58.3% of their games have gone over when they have a rest advantage, as well as, I should have mentioned, nearly 70% of their games with a rest advantage they've covered in this year. So I like Chicago as well as the over. No player props jump off the page to me. I don't want to force anything in this spot. I always tell you guys, don't force anything, so I'm going to take my own advice here. Not really forcing anything player prop wise. Milwaukee taking on Charlotte. It's a big number, and we know Milwaukee has struggled against the spread this season. Charlotte's actually been pretty damn good against the spread. They've covered in 7 of their last 10. But I think, and I've mentioned it a couple times, I think this Milwaukee team's got a little bit something cooking right now, post All-Star break. So this will be kind of a test. I'm noting it, but not going to bet it. I'm going to lean Milwaukee minus the points. I do think that this is going to be a spot in which people are like, Milwaukee stinks against the spread, and Charlotte's been good. Let's hammer Charlotte. I wouldn't get too carried away with the Charlotte team. So I'm going to lean Milwaukee here, minus the points. Total sitting at 221 and a half. Charlotte's actually moving up in terms of pace. They were a bottom 5 team in terms of pace. They're middle of the pack right now, as is Milwaukee. So Charlotte's ranked 15th in the last 10 games against in terms of pace, and then Milwaukee 16th. I think this could be a game that goes slightly over, and I mean slightly over. If this was 225.5, I wouldn't be considering touching it, but 221.5, you could convince me there. But yeah, give me Milwaukee minus points, as well as a slight lean towards the over. Player props here. Hate to do it 2 games in a row, but nothing that I totally like. One thing I looked at, and it's like, well, depends on minutes and everything like that, is looking at Trey Mann under 11.5 points. I just don't think the shot attempts are going to be there. So that totally could be a play that we end up rolling with. But it's kind of like, you pulled that one out of your ass, didn't you? We're going to bet Trey Mann unders today. But it is the kind of one that, trend-wise and matchup-wise, definitely didn't hate. All right, OKC taking on the Rockets in this one. OKC at home. What I will say about this game is we know that the Rockets stink on the road, right? And we just had this game in Houston a couple nights ago. OKC wins 123-110. They were 6-point favorites. They cover that. Now OKC's at home against a Houston team that struggles on the road. I get how they got to 10 points. So I'm going to lean towards OKC here minus the points. Total sitting at 235. Last game finished at 233. OKC at home this year, hitting on 59.5% of their overs. And like I said, this is a Houston team that really isn't all that great defensively on the road. So I'll lean towards the over in this spot as well. It's a high number for Houston to be involved in. Like, that number doesn't alarm me for OKC, right? But for Houston, it's kind of like, ooh, can they even carry their weight there? So maybe it's something we stay away from, but I'm going to lean the over for now. I'm also going to take a peek at Chet Holmgren, over 1.5 3-pointers made. In that game we saw a couple nights ago, he had 5 threes made. Like, this is a Chet Holmgren that's a good shooter, doesn't always have the volume, right? But he's hitting 8 of his last 10 games. And I just think it's a spot in which if he's going to give you, maybe 6 threes, I love taking him for 2 of those. 48% shooter in his last 10 games here. On the season, 39%, but last 10, 48%. So the guy is shooting well as of right now. Give me him over 1.5 3-pointers made. Don't mind him on his points either. Again, in that last game, so he hit a bunch of threes, which helps. We had 29 points against this Houston team. I don't mind that spot. They also don't really defend the rim as well as you'd think. With kind of their bigs. So I don't mind him for points overall if he likes to mix it up and get it in there. Another player prop that I'm considering, and unfortunately I think that it's going to be juiced through the moon because of what we got it at last time, but I'll consider Jabari Smith Jr. over rebounds again. Same thought process applies as to last game. I think that Alpi Sengun is going to allow more rebounds to fall into Smith's lap because Sengun's going to be out chasing Chet Holmgren, which I just gave you him over in 3. So clearly I think he's going to be out there. Sengun, I think, will get that matchup. And we just saw Jabari Smith last 2 games, 16 boards, 17 boards. For plus 105 right now, you can get 9.5 boards. It's up 1 rebound from last game, but double-digit rebounds for him for plus money. I could be talked into that. So keep an eye on the pinned comment. All right, last game on today's slate. Not my favorite one. We got Portland taking on Miami. Portland 7-point favorites. Portland favorites. Yeah, right. Portland 7-point dogs in this one. And even with the injuries and whatnot and suspensions that Miami is to deal with, I do still think that this is a Miami spot. They beat Sacramento outright last night. They're on a back-to-back. I get it, but it's like, they're on a back-to-back. Okay. It still doesn't make Portland any better, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So I'm going to lean towards Miami. Don't know if that becomes a final play. In terms of a total, it's down at 213. Miami on back-to-backs this year have been really, really tough in terms of getting to the over. So I'm going to lean towards the under, even though that is such a low number. And then in terms of player props, nothing jumping off the board to me in this game. But yeah, guys, going to wrap for today's show. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hitting that like button helps out a ton. Hit that subscribe button if you are new as well. Appreciate each and every person that tunes in. I know I already gave a little bit of a rant in the video, but seriously, guys, changed my life, changed the channel's trajectory in the last, I want to say year and a half. And, it's truly like, if you work hard and are consistent, that's a huge thing with this, right? Being consistent, like, it'll pay off. So if you're out there being like, oh, that's something I want to do, or do this, X, Y, and Z, it doesn't have to be YouTube. Keep going. Like, just be consistent. Show up, and you'll get the opportunity at one point. You don't want the opportunity to come a day that you decided to stay home, and hypothetically. So I don't know why I'm giving you this motivational advice, but crush today, guys, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace out.